Hello everyone. Welcome to part one of the series of What If Rome Never Fell? Now, I know that this is a topic that has been covered before, um, but I didn't just make this topic to get views because I know it's one of the more popular alternate histories, but because I was genuinely thinking about this a while ago. And this was the first video that I was actually motivated to make in probably over a year and a half now. And so once I got this idea, I immediately started writing. I actually finished this probably about a week ago, but because I've been super busy at university, I haven't been able to focus on it. But now, without further ado, let's get in to this most important topic and see how the world would be different if Rome never fell. So the year is 486. It's been 10 years since the fall of the Western Roman Empire. In areas that were formerly Roman, Clovis I defeats Syagrius, the king of Soissons, at the Battle of Soissons. After this amazing victory, he founds the kingdom of the Franks. While, of course, all of this did happen in reality, the difference is that in this timeline, Clovis does not just see himself as a Frankish chieftain. Instead, he just sees his new kingdom as a successor state to the Romans, and so institutes Latin as the official language and embraces Christianity soon afterwards. And so the first Roman successor state emerges. 2 years later, 488, Theodoric the Great begins his conquest of Italy and slowly takes over the country. And by 493, he has defeated Odoacer, becoming king of Italy after his victory. Similarly, although this did happen all in real life, Theodoric the Great, just like Clovis, does not just want to be another barbarian chief. No, he also sees himself as a successor to the Romans, and he founds the second Roman successor state in the West. Now, of course, you might be asking, well, what happened to the Eastern Roman Empire? Well, it still exists, and so now we have three successor states to Rome: the Eastern Roman Empire, the Kingdom of the Franks, and the Kingdom of Italy. In 507, Clovis I conquers Western Gaul from the kingdom of the Visigoths, but 4 years later, he dies and his kingdom of the Franks collapses. Now, moving on a little bit, it's 527, and Justinian I ascends as emperor of Eastern Rome. In 533, he launches his Vandalic War, where the kingdom of the Vandals is conquered by Eastern Rome in just 1 year. And in 535, he launches a Gothic War, where the Eastern Roman Empire attempts its conquest of the kingdom of the Ostrogoths in Italy. The war is long and brutal, but by 554, the war ends with a complete conquest of the kingdom. Meanwhile, between 552 and 555, southern Spain is conquered by Eastern Rome from the kingdom of the Visigoths, the Ostrogoths' cousin. In 558, meanwhile, we get our first real divergence from the actual history, as Gaul is also conquered by Eastern Rome. Justinian I believes that he has conquered, for the most part, what the Roman Empire once was. And so he is proclaimed Roman Emperor once again, bringing back the famous and centuries-old empire at last. However, the Roman Empire is just beginning. In fact, just 9 years later in 567, the Avar Khaganate is established north of the Roman border on the Danube, and the newly united Rome faces its first major threat. Now, in 568, the Khaganate is firmly established. In that very same year, the Lombards begin to invade, being the first new barbarian threat that the Roman Empire has to face. Unfortunately, without Justinian's leadership, the Romans do not have a strong leader to keep back the barbarians, and the Lombards begin their expansion across Italy, establishing the kingdom of the Lombards. In 572, the Sixth Roman-Persian War breaks out, triggered by pro-Roman revolts in the Persian Caucasus. In 589, a civil war in Persia luckily weakens the state, and with Khosrow II winning, thanks to Emperor Maurice's help. In 591, Khosrow II ends the war, giving Rome most of Persian Armenia and western Iberia. Now, between 586 and 600, the Romans are slowly pushed back out of Spain by the Visigoths, while by 598, the Lombards have firmly established themselves in Italy. So, although the Roman Empire has been reunited, it is already facing challenges from the Avars, from the Lombards, from the Persians. And as the 7th century dawns, a new, more formidable enemy than any previously. The year is 602. In the halls of Constantinople, the Roman Emperor Maurice stands, walking around his palace as he does every day. And then bam! A knife in his back. And Roman Emperor Maurice dies, having been assassinated by a man named Phocas. Phocas then proclaims himself Roman Emperor, and this causes Khosrow II, the Persian king, to use it as a justification to declare war. A war that no one expected. In 609, Persia pushes into eastern Anatolia. In 610, it pushes further and reaches the Mediterranean. In 612, it begins its conquest of the Levant. And by 614, Jerusalem, the death place and the place where Jesus resurrected, the holy city in Christendom, is also taken by Persia. Persia seems like an unstoppable force. In 618, the conquest of Egypt begins, and in 619, even Egypt is conquered. A large part of the eastern part of the Roman Empire looks like it is gone for good, as Persia becomes more powerful than it ever did. But things are not all lost for the Romans. In 622, a Persian advance into Anatolia is pushed back. And although this is not very permanent, in 626, the Avars and the Persians make a joint attempt to attack Constantinople, which is still the capital of the Roman Empire, but they are decisively repulsed. In fact, in 628, the war finally ends. Nothing changes. The Roman Empire stands proud and preserved. It has not lost any land. It has regained Jerusalem. It has defended Constantinople, but it is weak. And an unexpected new neighbor takes full advantage of that. Remember that in the 620s, a man in Arabia begins something new, something radical, a new religion, one that is somewhat familiar to the Roman Christians, but one that is also very different. Its name, Islam, and it will soon rapidly expand and burst onto the world scene. It all begins at a quite uneventful battle called the Battle of Mu'tah between the Romans and the rising Muslim force in 629. But 3 years later, Muhammad dies, and the Rashidun Caliphate is established in Arabia. A new enemy that the Romans can't beat as decisively as the Persians. Between 632 and 635, meanwhile, a new barbarian group named the Slavs, take over large areas of the Balkans, and the Romans become preoccupied there. Now, just at the same time, in 634, the Rashidun Caliphate begins its invasion of the Levant, and just 2 years later, they also reach the Mediterranean. This is very ominous for the inhabitants of this area, who just remembered the Persians having taken over this exact same land and then being repulsed. But the Rashidun Caliphate, unlike Persia, is new, energetic, and led by some of the best generals in the world. Just 1 year later, in 637, Jerusalem is once again lost. But this time, it's to the Rashidun Caliphate. And between 638 and 639, the Levant is completely conquered, and eastern Anatolia also comes under attack. Between 639 and 643, Egypt and Libya are also conquered by the expanding Rashidun Caliphate. Now, this is a state of complete chaos. The Roman Empire has turned out to be a joke compared to the military superpower that it once was. Throughout the last 40 years, it has suffered nothing but invasions, almost losing its capital, losing the holy city in Christendom, being constantly under attack by the Slavs, the Lombards, the Arabs. And amid this complete destruction of Rome, the loss of Jerusalem for the second time is the final straw. This causes the Franks to declare independence. Now, although the Franks, of course, are not Romans, the majority of the people they rule over are still Romans, and they still speak Latin. And so, although this new kingdom of the Franks is not completely Roman, it is still considered a Roman breakaway state. Now, seeing the empire just collapse, the Romans begin to take action. In 645, the now re-established Eastern Roman Empire begins its attempt to reconquer Egypt, but by the next year it has completely failed. In fact, it fails so badly that between 647 and 648, southern Tunisia is lost too. But in, I guess, good news, perhaps, in 650, the kingdom of the Franks also collapses. But with Rome being attacked on so many fronts, it can do nothing to reconquer the area. So by this time, the middle of the 7th century, things are going pretty bad. What will happen next? Who will win? Well, there's only one way to find out, and that is if you like, subscribe, and share. And stay tuned for the next episode as we find out how the Roman Empire fares against all these new enemies. Alright guys, if you enjoyed this episode, let me know, and I'll see you next time.